Hi. Hi, Ritu ma'am.
Hi.
Myself, Tara. I'll be asking questions from the audience. Let me ask you. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ritu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Can you hear me?
Okay, shall I start with my questions? There are a lot many questions from the participants. Law limiting fake news are likely to lead to censorship that endangers free speech. What is your take on this? I repeat, law limiting fake news are likely to lead to censorship that endangers free speech. What's your opinion? This is a question from Marwa.
I think I think it's the responsibility. Fake news. If that is spreading fake news, if that is somebody's expression of freedom, then so be it. But as far as journalism is concerned, journalism has to be based only on fact. Journalism cannot be um, championing free speech and letting fake news grow and prosper out there. So I think there's a difference you have to make, and I think more important than ever before, which is why if fake news is conflated with freedom of speech and expression, then all the more reason that journalists need to educate audiences on how to identify fake from fact. And a journalist's limit is only his or her journalism, right? So you can only go up till there.
Shall I move to the next question?
Yeah, sure.
What's your opinion about influence of politics in making fake news? I repeat, what is your opinion about influence of politics in making fake news?
Unfortunately, there isn't any two ways about what opinion one can have on anyone funding or encouraging fake news. Least of all, politicians. I spoke about it in the initial part of my talk, but I think what we so I think that's what makes the fight against fake news a little tougher, because when it's coming from political sources, it garners for some sections some level of substance and credibility. But also, these are well-funded IT cells, which are where people go to work. That's their day job. They go in there and with a certain agenda, they generate fake content. So I think there is only one opinion that we can all have about that, which is that it's a very unfortunate scheme of things. I think our focus needs to be on how we're going to fight it through our journalism. It's unfortunately now a truism across the world, not just in our country.
Okay, shall I move to the next question?
Yeah.
According to you, how the corporatization of mainstream media houses affecting freedom of media and biases in reporting? It's a question from Udita Jain. Again, I repeat, according to you, how the corporatization of mainstream media houses affecting freedom of media and biases in reporting?
See, it's pretty evident. If you are a large industrial or corporate entity, it means you have several other businesses, and perhaps some of those businesses require you to be on the right side of your government. In which case, it can, unless the proprietors or the owners of the media house, which has other businesses, he has a completely hard wall which does not let any of the influence for the interest of one business leak into the media business. Otherwise, you will find that there will be stories that are held back, or stories that are pushed which are not entirely true. They are pushed out in the interest of either the corporate house itself, or in the interest of the powers that be that are enabling through regulatory processes or whatever, there are the businesses. The other problem is in our country, I talked about it, is there is no regulation against political entities owning media business, news media business, which in itself is a problem. And there is a media monitor, there is a media ownership monitor, you should look it up. They had such a difficult time and they are an international entity. They had such a difficult time when they were trying to identify ownership of media houses in India, because ownership structures are extremely complicated and they're extremely opaque. So you might find that, though anecdotally we all know who owns that particular media house, but if you try and look at their books, you will never be able to actually be able to reach the original owners. So, and unfortunately, in our country, there are just a handful of 4 or 5 corporate houses that directly or indirectly own all of media, which is a very, very dangerous model of complete media capture. And we also know that these are times of extreme propaganda and extreme polarization. We see that every night on some of our television channels. And not everybody understands or cares about where the ownership is and who's funding the news that they're watching in their living rooms every night. So a lot of it is seen as news and is understood as fact. But at the same time, there are a lot of independent media houses. I think they're largely in the digital space. There are several of them doing, and so that, just saying the bright side. I mean, a lot of what I'm saying is sort of dark and disappointing, but this is also the time that we've seen some of our best journalism across the country. This has really been, and sometimes that happens when independence of media is under threat. That's often the time when some of the best journalism happens, and we are witness to that. We've seen the kind of journalism that's gone into the investigation of the Delhi riots that happened. We saw the kind of journalism that went into the JNU violence episode. We have seen how the kind of journalism that's gone into unearthing the hackability of EVMs. So there has been some very, very, the Wire, Scroll, the News Minute. I mean, there's so many of us who are still fighting it out independently. So all is not lost, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Ritu. Let us move on to the next question. That is my last question. Did you think in order to have proper reporting, the dumbing down of news need to be reduced so that people get more facts than storytelling and sensational pattern of news needs to reduce? I repeat. Did you think in order to have proper reporting, the dumbing down of news need to be reduced so that people get more facts than storytelling and sensational pattern of news needs to reduce? Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think our audiences are very perceptive. I think they're very intelligent. I don't think any dumbing down is required. I think what needs to be done, however, is content needs to be made accessible. I think we as journalists need to understand where the audiences are. If the audiences are on Instagram and people are consuming content visually, then that's what you've got to do. That is not dumbing down. That is making your content accessible. You're not taking away from the factual merit of the story that you're putting out. Sensationalism, of course. I mean, sensationalism it does no good to anyone. It has, there was a view at some point that it drives TRPs and it does, it clickbaits, etc. But now, thankfully, we're finding that changing. Sensationalism is not necessarily translating into TRPs. So we are finding gradually from, the initial data that is even coming out for, say, the reporting during the COVID time, people are more perceptive. People are able to often see between fact and sensational reporting. They may, however, be consuming that as entertainment, which is the one dangerous thing, because subconsciously you're making fun of something. I've seen that so often that there'll be people sitting around and they'll be laughing at some over the top sensational reporting that is happening, but somewhere it is going into your psyche. So I think it is important, all the more important, to make your content accessible, to make it entertaining, even to make it interesting, where you're making it fact-based, so you're able to take on the sensationalism, rather than making your journalism so dry and purist that it's actually not finding a readership. So your journalism has to focus on finding readership.
Thank you for your valuable responses, ma'am. Anyway, I hand over my mic to Manju, ma'am.
Thank you, Ritu. There are a lot of questions for you, but due to the time constraint, we have to stop here. And we will send you all questions.
Oh.
And thank you, Ritu, for the informative sessions. It is a hard world for good journalists. It is inspiring to have journalists like you who stand for the cause of truth. We need a strong support from your side to shape future journalists of great courage to stand with truth. Thank you once again.